Viewers, it was just 25 minutes. That's all it took for India to strike fear into the hearts of terrorism. When you and I were asleep this morning, India's tri-services, comprising of the Army, the Air Force and Navy, launched 25 missiles in Pakistan. Ghar mein ghus ke marna, that's exactly what our forces did. 9 terror pads have been blown to smithereens, 5 of which were in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir and the remaining 4 in Pakistan mainland. While there's still no clarity on the casualty figures, sources say over 60 terrorists have been eliminated in this operation. 10 of them members of Masood Azhar's family. 21 terror hubs were identified after weeks and months of intelligence surveillance, but only 9 of them were annihilated, possibly because this was just a teaser.
मरकज ताइबा मुरीद के यह आईबी से 18 से 25 किलोमीटर दूरी पर है। 2008 के मुंबई हमले के आतंकी भी यहीं से प्रशिक्षित हुए थे। अजमल कसब और डेविड हेडली भी यहाँ ट्रेन हुए थे। मरकज सुभान अल्लाह भावलपुर के इंटरनेशनल बाउंड्री से 100 किलोमीटर दूर है। जैश-ए-मोहम्मद का मुख्यालय था। यहाँ पर रिक्रूटमेंट, ट्रेनिंग व इंडोक्ट्रिनेशन का केंद्र भी था। शीर्ष आतंकी अक्सर यहाँ आते थे। मैं आप सबको बताना चाहती हूँ कि किसी भी सैन्य ठिकाने का निशाना नहीं बनाया गया और अभी तक किसी तरह की नागरिक क्षति की रिपोर्ट नहीं है।
You're watching the News Hour at 10, debate number 1 on Times Now, Super Prime Time.
Joining us at the moment are Lisa Curtis, Director of the Indo-Pacific Security Program at the Center for New American Security and former Deputy Assistant to the President and Senior Director for South and Central Asia, National Security Council of the White House. With us also is Dror Idar. He is a former Israel ambassador to Italy and San Marino. Ashok Sajanar, former diplomat, also joins us on the show. Let me start with you first. Lisa Curtis, your estimation of India's response. It has been a responsible and a controlled response is what India has said, and it has struck only at terror camps, not at any civilian or military installations. How do you analyze India's response?
Well, I think, this is a major response. It's much more robust than India's response in 2019, which struck only one target. And, we never heard of any casualties from that strike in 2019. So this is much more robust. Several different targets, some in the Punjab, the heartland of Pakistan, but as you say, directed against terrorist targets. We know that in Pahalgam, that is the headquarters of Jaish-e-Mohammed, a U.S. designated terrorist group. Also, the attack in Meridke, we know that's the headquarters of Lashkar-e-Taiba, also a U.S. designated terrorist group. So the strikes do seem targeted at terrorist infrastructure, and it is troubling that here in 2025 we still have the existence of these terrorist groups inside Pakistan. But we would like to see the situation de-escalate. Nobody wants to see a conflict between India and Pakistan, 2 nuclear-armed countries. So I think the message is now that the situation should be diffused. The 2 countries need to find a way to talk to each other through a back channel and find ways to walk back from the brink of all-out conflict.
Right. And let me bring in Dror Idar on this as well. Dror, how do you see this? Because, Israel itself has spoken out and supported India when it comes to not just this strike in the past as well, whenever India has been the victim of terror, in this case, state-sponsored terror. And really, at the end of the day, do you see parallels between Israel's response in terms of defending its own people against terrorism and what India has done as far as these strikes on these terror camps are concerned?
So, good evening from Israel. There is a similarity between Israel and India in many ways. I mean, we are very tiny relative to India, but we both ancient civilization. And I remember my visit, in the historic visit of Prime Minister Netanyahu with Prime Minister Modi. And it was a great adventure to see this great nation of India. And to me, it seems like another round between India and Pakistan. In fact, like in Israel, that has to confront some Islamic group of terrorists. Also, India has the same problem, and also India has to cope with China, and we also have to cope with the allies of China and other. So I identify with the effort of India to try to keep to maintain the stability there. And now what we see is maybe the same round that we saw in Israel until one day there will be a final strike.
Right. Let me bring in Ashok Sajjaner on this. Ashok Sajjaner, with the exceptions of, say, China and Turkey, by and large, the world has come out in India's support in terms of what happened as far as the dastardly attacks in Pahalgam are concerned. Even now, India has kept several of its countries with which it has close ties, several of the UNSC members as well. India has engaged in. The very fact that the Prime Minister, the External Affairs Minister are reaching out. They've been communicating over the last few weeks, and they have specially reached out today as well. Do you think India will be able to ensure that, at least as far as the world is concerned, when it comes to the controlled response that India has given, not targeting the military installations, for instance, but at the same time reaching out deep into Pakistan, particularly into the heartland, to send out the message that no terror emanating from Pakistan will be tolerated? Do you think that message has gone out to the world at large?
Yes, thank you very much, Madhav. And I agree with you. I think the message is very clear that as far as India is concerned, it has zero policy towards terrorism. And I think that is really what the world also wants, because the world is tired of these terrorist attacks, from the so-called non-state actors and others. So India taking a very tough stand, a very strong stand, I think definitely it will be welcomed by the world. As you said, China and possibly Turkey. These are the only two countries which are, big supporters as far as Pakistan is concerned. But I think India has also shown that in addition to the fact that we have this zero tolerance to terrorism, that India is a very responsible power. It has seen to it that there is no collateral damage that takes place, and it has acted in a very restrained manner, not acting against any of the civilians, not acting against any of the military bases as far as Pakistan is concerned. It's only the terrorists that have been targeted, their hideouts, their strongholds, their training places. So I think India, and this was also visible, Madhav, if I could say, when Pakistan, being a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council, requested for an in-person private consultation on the India-Pakistan issue. And rather than getting some strictures passed by the UNSC against India, it was itself put in the dock and made to answer questions about the presence of and activities of Lashkar-e-Taiba and the resistance front, etc., etc. So I think whether it is the UNSC or the world at large, they are with India in terms of the very controlled, restrained, measured, and responsible action it has taken.
Right. Lisa Curtis, I want to draw your attention to the response that has come in from the President of the United States. When he was asked about India's Operation Sindoor, he called it a shame, and he, gone on to say, I'm just going to quote what he said. We just heard about it as we were walking indoors of the Oval. I guess people knew something was going to happen based on a little bit of the past. They've been fighting for a long time. They've been fighting for many, many decades and centuries. If you think about it, I hope it ends very quickly. Now, leaving aside perhaps some of the factual mistakes here, the larger question is this, that, United States itself has been a victim of terror. India, which is, got very close ties with the United States, continues to be a victim of terror. It's been a victim for the past several decades. In a situation like this, why would the United States not urge upon Pakistan, which of course has ties with the United States, to dismantle its terror network and terror infrastructure? Because Indian restraint in the past has been met with more aggression from the side of Pakistan, and we've seen that for several decades now.
Well, I think President Trump, when he reacted spontaneously saying it was a shame, I think he was talking about the overall situation and the fact that India, Pakistan were in this crisis situation and that military operations were happening that could lead to even more escalation. I think, I see it as just a statement that, he would like to see peace in the region, but really no more than that. And when you talk about what further steps can be taken to press Pakistan to finally shut down the terrorist infrastructure on its territory, I think this is definitely an issue, but this is an issue to deal with once the situation has settled down. I think right now there needs to be a focus on ensuring that there is not Pakistani military retaliation that could, continue to take us up the escalation ladder. That needs to be the immediate focus. But like you said, once things calm down and, we are back to a state of affairs where tensions are calmed, anger is reduced, and people can, focus on what's happening in the region, then I think there will be questions about why is the Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed still in existence? Why isn't LET leader Hafiz Mohammed Saeed in a proper jail? Why is he only under house arrest? So I think there are several questions that need to be asked. But right now, I think the U.S. is focused on how to keep these two countries from going to an all-out war. And I would point to Secretary of State Rubio's comments where he is talking about the need for restraint and the need for reduction in tensions.
Right. Ridar, the trouble with, these kind of groups is that you may attack their headquarters, but they do have a tendency to regroup. And we've seen in the case of Israel as well, while there was a brief cessation of the hostilities and the fighting, Israel once again came out and, had to launch its attacks. While India's attacks have been very precision-based strikes on particular locations, do you see a parallel there? Because there is always the danger that these groups can once again come together, regroup, and try the activities, engage in the activities that they have been engaging in the past, leading to acts of terror.
Of course. There is one religion. It's not religion. We don't have anything against Islam. And I think that also India is a very tolerant state. But there is some extremist group in that religion of Islam that do not accept any of the, condition of human being, to live in peace. Israel and India have the same problem. I mean, it's not a problem, but the same condition. We are a democratic country, democratic countries, while these group are totalitarian. And so what I can say from our experience, that eventually there will be a time to eliminate this danger at all. It means that you cannot compromise on your life, on your security, when you have people that do not accept even the main principle of all the West and democratic countries, which is the sanctity of life, to live in peace together. They want to destabilize the whole region, not only in the Middle East, but also in India and other. And they find democratic state that have a problem in launching war, the same as the other groups. But I'm sure India will,
let me bring in,
prevail.
I just want to get in Ashok Sajanar very quickly on this as well. You know, Ashok Sajanar, we've seen the Pakistan Defense Minister Khwaja Asif's statement about being ready to back off if India halts its military offensive. What does this, according to you, signal about Islamabad's position? Because it's not in a position to sustain any kind of long-drawn war itself. Its own forex reserves are extremely low at the moment.
No, absolutely. And I think it's also ammunition, weaponry, equipment. You know, there have been reports that have come out that it cannot sustain a war for more than 4 days. So, you know, it cannot really, notwithstanding all the bravado and, you know, having nuclear weapons, etc. So, you know, it cannot really sustain that. And we've seen that its mobilization of all its forces and troops, that has also been draining it of the, you know, very scarce foreign exchange that it has been having. So obviously, you know, Pakistan knows that by this Pahalgam attack on 22nd April, it has really painted itself in a corner. And it had thought that, you know, it could get away with it by all this bravado talk. But I think they have not taken the full measure of the present government of India that has been here in position for the last 10 years. That, you know, this message is very clear that if you are going to mess with us, then India is going to hit back very strongly. We are a very responsible power. We are a very restrained power. We want to have good relations with all countries. And even with Pakistan, when Prime Minister Modi came to power, you would remember on, you know, the first inauguration on 26th May, then meeting in, you know, different parts of the world, they decided that we'll take the relationship forward. But even after he had traveled to Pakistan, Madhav, you would remember on the 25th of December 2015, and he came back, and on the 1st January, we had the Pathankot attack.
So those attempts at diplomacy have often been rebuffed. It's a historical fact. We've seen it many times over. But before I end this debate, Lisa Curtis would like to get in your views, because as somebody who watches South Asia so closely, in terms of India's response to terrorism and terror attacks, do you think that we've entered a new paradigm? Because thus far, you'd hear of India crossing the LOC, you know, conducting some strikes there and coming back after launching attacks in PoK. This time round, it has been across the international border, and it's in mainland Pakistan that some of these strikes have happened. It's a very, very different approach than what India has had in the past. Lisa Curtis.
I think that's right. I think the Modi government, ever since they first came to power back in 2014, has showed that they are going to take a more robust response to terrorist attacks that appear to have a hand by Pakistan. You can look back at the 2008 Mumbai terrorist strikes, where we know there was Pakistani involvement in those attacks, but there was, you know, not a direct retaliation against Pakistan by military means. And the focus was very much just on getting the international community to press Pakistan to crack down on terrorism. But now I think India has demonstrated it is willing to strike into Pakistani territory. It's up the ante. And so I think we are in new territory. We're in dangerous territory. But this is the new reality that we see under the Modi government.
All right, Lisa Curtis, Dror Idar, as well as Ashok Sajanar, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us and analyzing the possible fallout, diplomatically speaking, and also, of course, what we can expect in coming days as far as the current response of India is concerned to Pakistani terror. Thank you so much for joining us indeed.